What's going on, guys? My name is Triforce Addiction. Welcome back to another COD mode video. So today I decided to do a weapon comparison video because I really had no other video ideas. I mean, Season 5 is coming in like, next week. We haven't really gotten any news, so there's not really much to cover. But today I wanted to discuss two weapons that I'm sure has been the age-old question at this point. Which weapon is better, the AK117 or the AK47 with the 5.45 rounds? So I'm sure there has been quite a bit of debate, talking about which gun is actually better, the AK117 or the 5.45 AK47. And this is something that has always kind of like plagued me for a while. And until they made a few patches to the 117 and the AK47, things have changed. My opinion has changed because, of course, the weapons that we have now today perform much more differently than they did a few years ago. In fact, most weapons today kind of perform differently than they do like so long ago. For the AK117 specifically, right when the gunsmith started, I mean, it was probably one of the more terrible weapons to use. And even with the AK47, let's be honest, the 5.45 rounds didn't come out until probably a little later on down the line. If anything, it probably came out maybe at the tail end of year one, around like this, the double digit seasons. And let's be honest, I mean, the 5.45 rounds now are far better than how they were before. I mean, if you guys remember, having that thing get released at that point in time was just a complete waste of time. If you guys remember, the 5.45 rounds for the AK-47 were so bad to the point where it would reduce your range. It also maybe increase your fire rate, I believe. But at the same time, it gave you like recoil downside. But back in the day, I mean, the AK-47 jumped like crazy. So having that extra downside just made things worse, including the high fire rate, which made the recoil like stack even more. It was just absolutely terrible. And if I'm correct, you needed like a lot of different attachments, like the marksman barrel or like the ranger barrel, to have it be controlled perfectly, which came at a huge cost of your speed. And keep in mind, like, the damage, or I guess the time to kill, was a lot slower back in the day. Like having that type of mag would reduce it down into like a 5 to 6 shot kill. It was until like way later on, like maybe 2 years later, that they really started to improve the AK-47. They made it far more stable. They had to make some recoil changes here and there, some of the visual recoil, as well as like, the initial vertical recoil itself. They did change that, so the weapon right now is far more stable than ever. I mean, if anything, with the 5.45 rounds, you're actually able to run like all the fast attachments with I guess minor recoil issues. And even with all the improvements, now you're able to 4-shot from a pretty decent distance, especially for the 5.45 rounds. So yeah, a lot of improvements have been made, as well as the AK-117. I mean, we have gameplay here, and I haven't even said a single word about it. So the AK-117, a lot of people have complained that it had like no range, very little damage, and just a very unpredictable recoil pattern. As for me personally, when it came to the recoil pattern, I didn't notice it too often, but there are times when I did. And yeah, sometimes it would get in the way, but it wasn't really much of a big issue. My main issue was the fact that it had very low damage and just very low range. It was until like later on they started actually improving the range and making it able to actually 4-shot from like maybe 20 meters. And I believe until recently they actually did change the recoil pattern, so now it really only kicks up. I did hear Bobby Play say like a few days ago that he still doesn't like the recoil pattern. Maybe he hasn't tried it yet, or, I don't blame him. I mean, there's so many other weapons to use in ranked. So maybe he just hasn't figured out that it has changed. So I know I got a little sidetracked talking about the weapon's history, but it is kind of amazing to see how these weapons have grown in time. So now for the long-awaited question, which weapon is actually the better one? Is it the 117 or the 5.45 AK-47? So I am aware that Cygnus and some other people have already made videos comparing both of those things. And I do have to admit, I mean, it's a very close one, but I would have to say that the AK-117 does come a little bit closer. If it wasn't for that recoil change that happened like maybe a season or two ago, the 5.45 might have had the advantage. But keep in mind, I mean, there are some significant downsides with the with the AK-47's 5.45 rounds. And one of them, besides just lowering the damage, is the fact that immediately you lose 15% of your base range. So instead of having like maybe 20 meters of 4-shot potential, you end up having about maybe 17. Of course, you could use the Ranger barrel, but again, I mean, having that whole downside, you're only going to get 30% of that range boost benefit. And also, you could stack it with monolithic suppressor as well, which can actually probably give you a little bit more range than the AK117 at its base. But again, it's going to cost you a lot of mobility. I believe it goes up to like 32 meters where you can actually 4-shot, which is actually pretty good for the AK-47 and the 5.45. But with the AK-117, since it's basically pre-built into the weapon, you don't lose 15% of your base range. So this basically means that you're going to have a lot more range by default. And keep in mind, I mean, they have improved the speed of the 117, I won't lie. So you can actually use monolithic suppressors with I guess very minor downsides. You can also use maybe a marksman barrel for longer range maps, which does help as well. But I will say that the AK-47 isn't without its benefits, especially if you do use the mag, because in terms of mobility potential, at least, it could actually trump the AK-117. And I say that because overall, like over these past months and years, the AK-47 has been more stable and even more stable, meaning that you could use no stock, you could use the MIP light barrel shorts, and make it into a complete speed demon. And keep in mind, guys, if this was like 2 years ago, you would never be able to do that. And you could further improve its speed and its accuracy with the OWC Laser Tactical. So again, I mean, you can make this thing incredibly fast, much more faster than the AK-117 if you do decide to go that route. Fun fact, in the gameplay that you're seeing with the AK-47, I'm not even using the Ranger barrel. I'm actually just using the MIP light barrel with monolithic suppressor, long shot, as well as just other stuff. So yeah, I don't really have to like go the full extra mile to have more speed. For me, I'd like to have a healthy balance of everything. But yeah, overall, I mean, when it comes to damage range and power, I would say that, yeah, the AK-117 is far better. But if you want a more mobile type of fast firing weapon, I do recommend using the AK-47 with the 5.45. But anyways, that's going to conclude the comparison video for today. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, which one you use more. I'm actually pretty interested to find out. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Make sure I already said all that stuff. But yeah, anyways, laters, guys.